What if the most powerful antidepressant isn't in a bottle? It's simply just a 10-minute walk by the sea. Today, I'm showcasing the history, the deeply human pull of the coast, and there'll be a special focus on some North Kent landmarks. So we're featuring the North Kent coast and the benefits of the North Kent coast for mental health. We'll look at the natural stress relievers. You'll get to understand why we feel better nearer to the water. I'll explain it all in this episode. So from this point, I'm looking west from Reculver Towers in the direction of Whitstable, Faversham, Sittingbourne, and eventually Sheerness, although you can't see the island from here. To think out there at one time was a proper settlement, probably Roman, I think. So welcome again to Peace Unplugged. Imagine now you can hear the faint sound of the sea in the distance, the waves lapping on the shore. I'm going to talk to you about something that millions of people feel instinctively, but science is only just catching up with it. It's the profound effects that the coast has upon the mind and the spirit. So stick with me on this, because there will be little snippets of film that I've created over the last few days, just to add some context. The North Kent coast is a stretch of shoreline that stretches from Gravesend to Thanet, and the whole area is actually stoked with history. It's been battered by sea winds, and it's lit by some of the most amazing sunsets. It's actually doing more for people's well-being than you'll ever get from a GP surgery. So let's now begin. Picture this. You're inland. You're stuck in traffic. You still got thoughts of the office buzzing in your head. The cortisol level is up. Your stress hormones are elevated. The nervous system is going haywire. And let's face it, that's modern life for many of us. Now, just for a moment, picture stepping onto the beach, looking out over the horizon. The air smells different, doesn't it? In those situations, our breathing begins to slow. Here we have evidence of... No, we're not quite round to Herne Bay yet. But could this have been a place where Daniel Craig... Correction. Could this have been a place where Daniel Fagg, the infamous smuggler, stopped his boat, went up through the tunnels? Or perhaps maybe a bit further round the corner. Wondering if they are part of what was originally smugglers' tunnels. There's a very clear shift. But what's actually happening to our body? For quite a few years now, the wellness industry is focused on open spaces. That's recommending open spaces like parks, walking in the forest, woodland walks, blue spaces by the river and lakes. Now, all of those have a great benefit, but the sea gets largely overlooked. Mental health research has been slow to recognise this. We're often told to get outside more, but a few scientists are actually asking, but where exactly? Well, that gap has now been filled. Here's some of the evidence. A landmark study published in Health and Place 2019 by Dr. Matthew White and colleagues at the European Centre for Environment and Human Health, University of Exeter, found that people who lived within 1 kilometre of the coast reported significantly better mental health outcomes than those living inland. Marine biologist and author Wallace J. Nichols coins the term blue mind in his 2014 book of the same name, describing the mild, meditative calm our brains enter near water. He argues that water activates the default mode network, the part of the brain associated with rest, creativity, and self-reflection, while simultaneously quietening the prefrontal cortex and anxious chatter. You see, the North Kent coast is the blue space at its most democratic. From Whitstable to Margate, these are not just exclusive resort towns. They are actually a working shoreline. They're real places where people go to breathe, and they're filled with fascinating history. Check out some of my other podcasts, which refer to the smuggling around the Birchington coast. Spending at least 120 minutes a week in nature is associated with good health and well-being. Scientific Reports 97730, that's Nichols WJ 2014, Blue Mind, Little Brown and Company. The North Kent coast is ancient in a way that very few places in England still manage to feel. Stand at the cliffs at Broadstairs, or walk the sea wall at Whitstable, walk along the sea wall from Laysdown on the Isle of Sheppey, or walk from Minas Bay out towards Reculver along the sea wall. It's likely you're standing in areas where the Romans landed, where Vikings raided in their longships, perhaps where Chaucer's pilgrims passed, where Charles Dickens walked every day in his adult life, just to calm his mind. History, you see here, isn't behind glass. It's under our feet. It's in the salt air. It's in some of the names of the pubs and some of the names of the streets and roads. You see, our modern life is an area of radical disconnection. Psychologists have documented an epidemic. It's what they call temporal dislocation. And that's the sense that we only exist in the narrow bandwidth of the present, and that we're severed from anything larger than ourselves. This disconnection is linked to lots of anxiety and depression in people. Research published in Environment and Behaviour, that's Rudd, Vols and Arca 2012, found that the experience of awe, which includes standing before something vast, ancient, or historically significant, meaningfully reduces impatience, increases life satisfaction, and reorientates people away from the anxious self-focus. This is known as the awe effect, and believe me, there's tons of that on the North Kent coast. The Isle of Sheppey, take a drive down towards Hearty Ferry. You'll be surprised when you see the turn-off how long that road leads down to that little space with the pub on the coast. Consider Reculver, the Roman twin towers. They can be seen for miles across the sky. There's a Smuggler's Coves at Botany Bay, Broadstairs. The Turner-painted skies in Margate. These are not small things. They're the anchors that relieve a restless mind. The Victorian physician William Harvey, born in Folkestone, just along the Kent coast, wrote about the restorative properties of sea air as early as the 17th century. His intuition has taken 400 years to become data. The data now agrees with him, or expands people's perception of time. It helps to alter decision-making, and ultimately it enhances our well-being. There's a reason that people have said for centuries that the sea air does you good. They weren't being poetic. They were actually reporting something real, but without the language to explain it. You see, sea air is chemically distinct from inland air. It carries higher concentrations of negatively charged ions. That's tiny electrically charged particles, and they're produced when waves crash on the seashore, and those ions enter the atmosphere. Now, negative ions sound a little bit like science fiction, don't they? It appears the wellness industry has co-opted this into selling things like overpriced salt lamps. Whilst they have a benefit in themselves, we kind of miss the science of where that comes from. That genuine science is really compelling. Research by Columbia University psychiatrist Michael Terman and colleagues found that high-density negative ion exposure has a significant antidepressant effect in patients with seasonal affective disorder, known as SAD. That's comparable to both light therapy and antidepressant medication. The proposed mechanism involves elevated serotonin levels in the brain following negative ion exposure. Coastware also carries seaborne microorganisms from the ocean surface. That's including Mycobacterium wackeyi, a harmless soil and sea bacterium shown in research by Christopher Lowry at the University of Bristol to stimulate serotonin production and reduce anxiety-like behaviour. In short, the very air of the Kent coast may be nudging our minds and our thought processes towards calm. On a clear day at Herne Bay or the Isle of Sheppey, with the westerly wind, that chemistry is at its most potent. People living there describe a real feeling of ease, which is impossible to replicate elsewhere. There's references here from Terman M and Terman JS, 1995, treatment of seasonal affective disorder with high output negative ionizer. If you've ever watched the sun go down over the Thames estuary from somewhere like the seawall at Gravesend or from the cliffs above Margate, you'll already know that what happens there is not ordinary. The sky turns to some amazing vibrant colours, such as deep amber, burnt coral, bruised violet, and those colours hold for minutes until the sun has gone. We know that J.M.W. Turner lived and painted these landscapes along the coast. He did that for decades. He described the Kent night as unlike anything else in the whole of England. And again, the reason for that matters for our mental health. Most people think of light as primarily something to see by, but light is also a biological signal. It's a powerful regulator. If we get our light inputs wrong, it can affect our sleep, our mood and our appetite, our hormone balance, and our cognitive functions. All of these, if it's wrong, they will start to degrade. Millions of us in urban Britain are getting our light inputs chronically wrong. Research from Harvard Medical School's Division of Sleep Medicine confirms that exposure to natural light in the late afternoon and evening, specifically the warm, low-angled red spectrum light of a sunset, plays a critical role in signaling to the brain that it is approaching rest time. This sunset light suppresses cortisol, triggers the gradual onset of melatonin, and prepares the body for deep, restorative sleep. The North Kent coast offers an unobstructed western horizon over the Thames estuary. Visitors and residents receive this in full. It's unfiltered. There's no tower blocks. There's no hills. There's just light. And of course the water carrying it towards you. But somewhere along this stretch, and very possibly just here, where there's some defences just made, back in the late 1960s, my father was involved in some archaeology down here, which I believe I was actually at. I was about 4 years old, and he excavated a pot from this area, which was kept for a while in Powell Quex Park in the museum there. Myself and my brother would try to locate it. I think it's away in storage somewhere, so it's quite an important area. Attention restoration theory, developed by environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan, holds that natural environments, and in particular visually complex but non-threatening scenes, such as a coastal sunset, replenish our capacity for directed attention. That means, in plain terms, watching the sun go down at Whitstable, it's not just leisure, it's what's known as cognitive restoration. I can vouch for that, recalling when I used to commute back from London on late spring or early summer evenings, looking out the window of the train, passing Tankerton, leading into Whitstable. I used to chat with fellow commuters, and we'd speculate on the value of the beach huts along that area. Watching the sun going down, it glinting off the sea. I have to tell you, it's a beautiful sight. Now, close your eyes for a moment. That's assuming you're not driving, of course. Just imagine for a moment the sound of the waves, that rhythmic rush and retreat, the hiss of the foam on the shingle, the low pulse of the ocean. It's just doing what it's always done, long before we were here. Something happens when we hear that sound, something measurable. We live in a culture of relentless auditory stimulation. There's phone notifications, traffic, there's voices, there's music, there's podcasts. Yes, even my podcast. The result is the nervous system is never fully at rest. Chronic low-level noise has been linked to multiple studies that elevate blood pressure. The result in poor sleep, increased cortisol, and reduced positive thought processing. We are actually, perhaps acoustically, overwhelmed. The sound of the ocean waves is not just pleasant, it's physiologically distinct. A study published in Scientific Reports, Gould and Prague et al. 2017, using functional MRI, found that listening to the natural soundscapes, and coastal sounds in particular, shifted brain activity away from the default inward-focusing patterns associated with the anxiety and rumination towards an outward-directed attentional state. Crucially, it also reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection centre, and it increased connectivity in the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system. The shingle beaches of the North Kent coast, at Whitstable, Tankerton, Herne Bay, and across the Isle of Thanet, they produce a particular acoustic sound as the waves pull forward and back across the shore. It's not the roar of the Atlantic surf, it's something quieter and more persistent. It's a long, slow exhalation. For those of us that live here on the coast, it reminds us that we are home. That feeling of homecoming is not just nostalgic, it's neurological. It's the brain recognizing the sounds and signals of safety. It's repetition without threat. It's the deep time of the natural world. It is, quite simply, one of the most calming sounds a human being can hear. So here's a summary. 5 reasons to consider the coast and your health. Here's what the science tells us. Blue space proximity measurably improves our mental health. Living within 1 kilometre of the coast, it's associated with significantly better mental health outcomes. The effect is consistent across socio-economic groups, and it's important of other lifestyle factors. Point 2. Historical awe-inspiring environments are known to reduce anxiety and expand our perspective. Encounters with places of history, like Reculver Towers. There's on here these towers. The remains of the once venerable church of Reculvers were purchased of the parish by the Corporation of Trinity House with Deptford Stroud, I think it says, in the year 1810. Or some of the Victorian architecture in Margate. These can trigger the awe response. It reorientates the mind away from self-focus towards a larger sense of meaning. Number 3, coastal air contains mood-enhancing negative ions and beneficial microorganisms. Sea air is rich in negatively charged ions and natural bacteria, and these can stimulate serotonin production. This is just not folk wisdom. It's actually biochemistry. Breathing air on the North Kent coast is one of the simplest, most accessible forms of natural mood and support available. Number 4, coastal sunsets regulate the circadian rhythm, so they improve sleep quality. Exposure to that low-angle red spectrum of light, those sunsets signal to the brain that it's time to rest. It suppresses the cortisol and it initiates the melatonin production. The horizon of the North Kent coast makes it an ideal environment for natural light therapy. Number 5, the sound of the sea naturally calms. The ocean soundscapes reduce the amygdala activity. They lower stress. It shifts the brain into some rest and recovery. We get that from the sound of the waves on the shingle. And this is available for free year-round. All we need to do is take a walk along the shore. North Kent coast is not typically a sort of place people associate when they think of wellness. Let's face it, we don't really have a spa. They're not really luxury resorts. But what it does have is history, light, air, and the sounds of the sea. As it turns out, that's everything. If you live near the sea, go more often. If you don't, consider making a journey down to the North Kent coast. Come and visit Birchington, Peace Bay, Herne Bay, Reculver Towers, Whitstable, the Isle of Sheppey, Gravesend. You'll find your nervous system will thank you for it. So until the next time, keep well, folks. Keep breathing that good air, and bye for now.